I plant oats in my own and my clients' spring food plots. And today I'm going to talk about 5 reasons why you should plant oats in your spring food plots as well. My name is Cole Peters. I own and operate Peters Land Management, where I work with hunters, farmers, and ranchers across Nebraska, Kansas, and Colorado to improve the productivity of their land and increase the value of their land. Now let's talk about 5 reasons why you should plant oats in your spring food plots. Reason number 1. Generally speaking, oats are pretty easy to grow. Oats are a large seed, there's a lot of energy in that seed, and as long as you can get good seed-to-soil contact, most of the time you can get oats to grow. Oats do well in many different soil types, so they can be grown in many different areas, which is beneficial for us as food plotters, hunters, land conservationists, whatever you want to call yourself. Oats can also be planted at different seed depths in the soil, so there's kind of a large room for error, which is beneficial again because there's more likelihood that you can get success planting oats than there are other different species. Like say a clover or something small like that, a brassica, something small. You plant them an inch deep, you're not going to get great germination, if any of it. It's just too deep. Like the seed can't get through it. With oats, you can plant it anywhere. Even if you planted it an 1/8 inch to 2 inches deep, it could grow. Generally speaking, what I go for depth is about 1 inch, maybe a little deeper, just depending on the soil type. If it's a sandier soil, you can go a little deeper than it is if it's a more silty, firm soil. You can get good germination out of oats of all these different seed depths, which is a plus because it makes it easier to grow in many different types of soils and environments. Reason number 2 is, generally speaking as well, oat seed is cheaper than other food plot seeds that you might plant. I'm going to talk about 2 in particular here. One is soybeans, specifically forage soybeans, because that's very commonly planted for food plots for whitetails and other game animals. And then the other one we'll talk about is milo, and again we're going to compare a pound to a pound. So a pound of oats to a pound of forage soybeans, pound of oats to a pound of milo. Something to keep in mind though is all 3 of those different seed species have to be planted at different rates. So it is going to be your price is going to be different per acre. But again, just keep it simple, apple to apple comparison, a pound of oats to a pound of soybeans, a pound of milo. So from one seed dealer that had all 3 of these, I found that a pound of oats is $1.05 per pound. Okay, pretty good. Going to the forage soybeans, those forage soybeans are $2.75 a pound. So you're looking at over 2.5 times the price for the same pound. And then comparing oats to milo, grain sorghum. Again, oats are $1.05 a pound. A pound of milo is $3.50 a pound. So that's over 3 times the price for the same pound. Again, something you need to keep in mind though and keep into consideration is oats are going to be planted probably around 120 pounds an acre. The soybeans can be planted anywhere, it depends where you're at. Could be 30, could be 60, 70, maybe even 80. It just depends soil types, where you're at, what your goal is. And then milo's really low. Milo's anywhere from 4 pounds to 6 pounds on the high end, just kind of depends. But we're just comparing a pound of oats to a pound of the other 2, and oats are drastically cheaper. So that's a nice thing, especially if you got a new plot, you're not sure if you can grow anything. That's something I do for my clients in new plots, and even on my own personal plots. When I'm trying to establish a new plot in the spring, I'll go in, I'll mow, I'll spray, I'll make sure everything's good there. But I'm not sure what to expect in growth. I'll try just with oats because oats are easy to grow. It'll tell me if you can grow anything there, and it'll tell me based on how the oats grow if that could be a productive plot for something else in the future. Plus, it's pretty cheap to do. If it doesn't work, you're not out a bunch of money like you would be if you went with a clover or an alfalfa or even a soybean, something like that, where the seed's more expensive. Oat seed is cheaper, so it's a good seed to use in establishing a new plot. Reason number 3. Oats have what's called an allelopathic compound. And what that means is oats release a chemical in the soil that can be toxic to weed species in that soil. The allelopathic chemical that the oats release in the soil can last in the soil for a few weeks. So what that means is you can get weed suppression or weed elimination for a few weeks. And again, to get weed elimination, there's a few situations that can happen. Sometimes it just doesn't happen, but you will get weed suppression from the oats if and as long as you plant at a high enough rate, meaning around 100, 120 pounds an acre, for example. That's why I like planting at that rate. It's one reason why I like planting at that rate. If you plant at, say, 30, 40 pounds an acre rate, that's a light rate of oats, and the oats may not emit enough chemical to outcompete all the weeds because there's a lot more exposed soil, a lot more sunlight's reaching the soil. And so those weeds, as long as they can get germinated, they can grow and they probably could flourish just because there's so much sunlight that reaches the soil and no competition from the oats. If you plant at a high enough rate though, the chemicals that are released from those oats will outcompete those weeds and you will get a much better result. Reason number 4. Plain and simple, deer love oats. They just do. Whitetails love oats. Oats are one of the first things that will grow and be green early in the spring, so they're just attracted there early, so the deer will hammer it there. When oats are young, deer can digest them easily, so they will target them, and they like eating them when they're young. As oats get older and grow taller, they'll grow more stem and less leaf than they have when they're younger, and the stem is less palatable for deer, and they don't like digesting it, and they can't digest it as well, so they won't hammer it, they won't eat it as much while the plants are still growing. They'll eat it a lot when it's young, and then they'll eat it a lot when it's starting to seed out, because that seed also will have some moisture in it, as will the younger plants. And the deer like that because they get a lot of their moisture in the spring and summer especially from what they eat. Oats also, when eaten at the correct times, can be high in protein. They can be anywhere 25-30% crude protein. That protein level can be very important for lactating does in the spring and for bucks that are starting to develop new antlers in the spring as well. They can get a good solid protein source. And reason number 5, oats are pretty easy to plant into with your fall crop that you're going to plant into your plots for that fall to hunt over throughout the fall and winter. And in a no-till situation like I have with my business, with my clients, with my own personal plots, I have a no-till drill. And so drilling through oats with a no-till drill is super easy. And you can tell where you've been, which is nice because you can follow your lines easily. Not a big deal except for the operator. It's very nice to know. The nice thing too with using the drill is when you go over the drill, your cultipacker or your closing wheels, whatever you got on the back of your drill, will lay the oats flat on the ground. And the oats are dead just because they ran their life cycle. They're dry. So when you drive over it, they'll lay flat on the ground, so they'll make a nice mat, which will help hold moisture in the soil, which is very important for where I'm at in areas where a lot of my clients are, because we don't get a lot of moisture. It'll make a nice moisture barrier, and it'll also create a barrier to fight weeds, which in the fall isn't so important, but it does help to minimize whatever weeds you may have in the fall. It's not perfect. It's not going to eliminate them per se, but it does help fight them. Now that's really beneficial for a no-till situation with the drill, but you can also get the same benefits from a broadcast situation if you're just going to broadcast your fall seed in there. Because if you broadcast seed in there, they're still going to get down into the soil. And then if you drive over it with a cultipacker, for example, you don't necessarily have to, but you can get better seed-to-soil contact that way. Drive over it with a cultipacker, you can flatten a lot of those oats to get the same benefit of using the drill, where you will be able to trap more moisture and fight more weeds, creating that barrier. So in review, the 5 benefits of planting oats in your spring food plots are: oats are pretty easy to grow, seeds pretty cheap, oats have an allelopathic chemical, deer love oats, and oats are easy to drill your fall food plot into or broadcast your fall food plot into. If you enjoyed the video, like the video, subscribe to the page, and I'm going to be putting out more educational videos like this in the future.